The sets of three different rhythms allow an effect to be created, where the units of consciousness that continue to be fed in from Source, from God, enter the three different rhythms, and they begin to fill out on the single-dimensional Partakai grid. They begin to fill out, first becoming two-dimensional and then three-dimensional. They crystallize. They form crystallized units of consciousness. They form kilans. Kilans are the next step in the building blocks of matter. It goes from single-dimensional Partakai units into two-dimensional Partakai and Partakam, which form grids, and that goes into kilans. Now again, we're talking about standing light waves, light and sound waves. But at this point, they're crystallized waves, where they're actually waves that turn off and on, but they have a crystalline, three-dimensional crystalline form. This is why we can experience three-dimensional reality. They each have a different relationship to each other. It's not just how often those lights are going to sequence or turn off and on. It's what angle, if you have one line going this way, what angle is the next line coming through if you have three lines, flash lines, three lines turning on and off at different rhythms. It's not just a different rhythm, but it's also what angular relationship exists between each of those lines. It's like if you were going to draw it on a piece of paper. One line goes this way, one line goes this way, and one line goes this way. So you have three different angles of intersection that allow the units of consciousness of Source to pass through, become Partakai and Partakai and Partakam, go into the Partakai grids. Is the three angles of intersection, as well as how fast they flash on and off, that allow the crystallization of three-dimensional matter to occur. Okay, yes?
It's some distortion.
Is this distorting? I'm sorry, what's it doing?
Sounds like the battery.
That fixed. Thank you very much for the quick return on the battery there. All right, so we talked about Partakai, Partakay, and Partakam, the basic units of consciousness that begin to build up and accrete or pull together to form the structures that will be the building blocks and the foundations of matter, the matter templates. We went from Partakai, Partakay, Partakam to groups of them that form standing scalar wave grids, Partakai grids, that have a relationship of three different flashing on and off rhythms and three different angles of intersection that create kilans, which are crystallized scalar wave patterns. They are still fixed, but they are kilans, as opposed to kilans are three-dimensional, solidified crystallizations that begin to create energy fields around and within themselves that allow for the holographic projection process to begin. Okay, we going to the next one, please. What am I doing? 47? What am I doing? Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the structure of dimensions, which is totally interwoven with what we were just talking about as far as scalar wave grids, Partakai, Partakay, and Partakam, flashing off at different rhythms of flash to each other. Now, what is a dimension? In traditional terms, dimension, the word dimension, is used really to describe other characteristics of a something else that's a noun. Like you have dimensions of consciousness. You have a dimension of this, like you're measuring something. This house has this dimensions. We use dimension in terms of it is a specific noun. It is an ism. It is a thing unto itself. Okay? Now when we talk about dimensions, these points help us to understand what they are. The unified field, which is the unified field, the scalar grid of the universe, the unified field of energy, is built upon dimensionalized sets of scalar standing wave points, wave strata. What does that mean? It means dimensionalized sets, I'll get into that in a minute, of the scalar standing wave grids. Now they are dimensionalized. Down here we'll get into what does dimensionalized mean. It means that each set has a different flash line rhythm and a different angle of intersection. So technically, we have a 15-dimensional system. Those 15 dimensions are broken down into sets of 3 dimensions each, giving us 5 systems with 3 dimensions each, 5 three-dimensional systems. A dimension is one flash line sequence. To keep it simple, if you think in terms of the light bulbs, a line of light bulbs turning off and on, and you have, let's say, a whole piece of plywood with 100 light bulbs on it, but they all have their nice little orderly rows. One dimension would be one flashline sequence. It would have its own rhythm. Let's say they flash on and off at this rate. It would have its own rhythm. That is a flash line. Now, you put 3 flash lines together, and you get a 3-dimensional system. So 1 dimension is 1 flash line sequence. It has its own rhythm, its own pulsation rate. The rhythm would be the pulsation rate of how energy moves in and out through that system. 1 dimension would also be the flash line sequence that the next one up is built on. The next one up would actually include that. As if you have 1 row of light bulbs, then the next row, that would be your dimension 2, you have 2 rows that equal the 1. The next one, you'd have 3 rows that equal the 1. So dimensions, flash line sequences, build on each other. When you get, if you want to look at the mathematics of it, dimension 1 would have 12 light bulbs. Okay? And they would flash on and off at a slow rhythm, let's say. Dimension 2 would have 24 light bulbs, and they would flash on and off a little faster. Dimension 3 would have 36, and they'd flash on and off even faster. If you take that all the way up, the 15-dimensional scale, what you are getting is 5 sets of 3 flash line sequences, each sequentially moving faster. So dimension 1, 2, and 3 would have the slowest combined rhythm, flash line rhythm, which is the Partakai phasing rhythm. Dimensions 4, 5, and 6 would go together, and they would have the next faster. They'd be faster than the one below it, but not as fast as the next 3 above it. This is creating a framework in which 5 separate reality fields coexist in the same space. They're only separated by the rhythm of flash, of their scalar waves, and by the angle of intersection between those light bulb lines. There's a 90-degree shift, or 90-degree angle of intersection between each of the 3, which translates into a 90-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin. Angular rotation of particle spin, mouthful. What that means is, by the time all this gets into manifest matter particles, flash line number 1, 2, and 3 are each going to create particles in the manifest world, subatomic particles and those kind of things, that have a specific angle of spin rotation. Now, science will tell us that subatomic particles and those kind of things spin. They move. They appear to move, have a spin rate, and they have a spin angle. Some are at different angles. We see in this reality field, what science can see under a microscope, are a very limited set of angular rotation of particle spins that fit within dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Between dimension 1 and 2, there's actually a 90-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin, which means a particle in dimension 1 be here with its axis like this. Okay? Then there'd be a 90-degree shift in dimension 2 and a 90-degree shift in dimension 3. So they're all interfacing at a different angle. This is what allows light and sound units, scalar waves, standing waves, to bend in a way that creates like a lens effect. The lens effect creates a system of energy structures that we'll talk about soon. They're called Hoover bodies that are circular, actually elliptical, kind of like spherical elliptical spheres of energy that begin the process of taking these grids, these flashline sequences of Partakai, Partakai, and Partakam, and chelons, taking them from scalar wave form into the illusion of holographically projected matter. It's as if we're all sitting in a bubble of energy. A spherical bubble of energy is around us, and consciousness moves through, takes the content of what's inside of us, and projects it out on the screen, just like a projector in a movie theater would, except the screen is round, and it's all around us. It's like being in one of those dome theaters where everything around you is like coming at you, the image is at you. We are actually, our bodies are actually serving as the holographic projector vehicle. Our DNA is the holographic template. What's in there becomes literally what we see before our eyes, which means, in broad terms, right now the fact that you're seeing me and that I'm seeing all of you implies that we're encoded in each other's DNA. Interesting concept, isn't it? It means you cannot walk any place and go anywhere and see anything that doesn't belong to you in your DNA. It may be something you don't want there. You would not be able to see as an outside reality field something that was not in your holographic template. So we begin to understand, and it takes a while. There's a lot of pieces to this to understand really what in the world are we seeing when we walk around. You know, it helps for a while. I used to do this exercise, and it's not one that has a step 1, step 2, step 3. It's kind of like a conceptual one. I used to say, okay, when I was trying to digest this stuff and really get a handle on experiencing what that meant, I would sit in a room very quietly and kind of slow my breathing right down and get toward like alpha brainwave state and mellow myself out and then say, all right, this is a hologram. Right now, everything I see before me is like a Kodak snapshot of what's in my DNA right there. Let me feel this reality. It takes a while, but if you play with that, you can do it anywhere. You can do it on the bus if you're good at blocking out distraction of sound and stuff around you. You start to get a feeling of, oh my God, I'm manufacturing this moment. There's a place where you can actually feel it to start to happen. If you play with that idea enough and get out of your own way mentally, we're saying, oh, I can't do that. Is that really true? If you stop the mental chatter and just focus on, I want to know my Kodak moment now. I want to feel it. I want to feel it. I'm making this. Wow, I'm creating this. And if it's a bad one, if it's a lousy moment, and you're having like really yucky stuff, say, my goodness, look how good I am at creating stuff. I'm creating a real mess right now. This is where you start to own your hologram, where you begin to realize life is not inflicting itself on you. You may be experiencing things you don't want to experience because your DNA template's running rampant right through you, and you don't realize you're creating it. It doesn't mean, oh, I must be terrible or really stupid because I'm creating this mess. It means there's something I need to fix in my DNA template if I want to make this better and I don't like what's out here. But there's a lot of people, most of the world, will look at the world and say, oh, I'm being victimized, the world's treating me terribly, it's treating me bad, it's your fault, you did it, you made it happen, you're victimizing me. As long as you're in that space, you will be a victim forever. I don't care if you're a Holocaust victim. You are still part of a mass drama that your DNA is carrying something that put you in that hologram. It doesn't mean you're bad or you deserve it. Just because you're the one manufacturing it at the moment doesn't mean, well, there, you deserve it. That's what a lot of people I've met actually do. There's some belief systems teach this stuff. Oh, well, it's your karma, so, don't bother me with it. I don't feel sorry for you. These can be the most obnoxious people because they don't have any compassion for anybody, as if they were doing any better, right? What did they do when something goes wrong in their world? Why me? What's wrong with my world? I guess it's my karma. What do I do with that? I don't know, right? They start to learn compassion by that. We need to realize that we have the ability to begin manifesting what we desire. But first we have to own everything we're creating. We are creating everything we see around us, every event we have, both personally and as a part, if we're a part of a mass drama. Like the mess we're moving into now with the war against terrorism. Oh boy. Talk about mass projections happening. We will first become empowered if, no matter how lousy it is out there, if we can say, the part of this that I'm experiencing in my life, just for the fact that I'm a part of it, if I can recognize this is my hologram, the next question is, oh my God, what's in my DNA? And how do I get it out of there fast? Right? You don't beat up on yourself for not creating it the way you want it. That doesn't help either. If we can realize that the reason we've had such a hard time as a race creating what we would desire to see are because of the DNA distortions that chop up the different levels of consciousness. So we forgot how to communicate with the rest of ourselves. We're like creation machines running rampant. And on the subconscious level, we're creating a bunch of stuff that's creating misery for ourselves and for the planet. It's been going on for thousands of years. There's not any one person to blame, and blame is useless. If we can realize that this is the problem, we're a part of a mass problem. It's not just you that's messing up your hologram. We're all doing it really well. It shows you your creative potential, though. If you can create a hologram that's a mess, you can change your mind and create one that's nice. So that's where you start to own your power. Most of the world is perfectly willing to say, it's their fault. Let's go blow them up. Let's blame them. Let's put them away. And the victim-victimizer game goes on and on and on, as it has for 25,000 years and more. The way to break that cycle is to realize whatever side of the victim-victimizer game you end up playing doesn't change the fact that you're in that game is part of your hologram, part of what you've manifested. So in beginning to understand the core things of the fact that we're in a dimensionalized universe system, a dimensionalized universe system that means our consciousness is taking on the form of standing scalar waves that are adopting a primal order form that has, the order form is a very specific mathematical program, and it's a very simple one, really. A mathematical program that says there are 15 different rhythms of flash that will go together in groups of 3, and each 3 of those will intersect with each other at a different angle, a 90-degree angle of intersection. That is the format we're in. Yeah, we can put that on there now. Good. Go for it. What that creates, what those 15 different flash line sequence creates, and no, you're not going to see this if you go out into outer space. It's not hanging out there in the sky. Think about it. That's our hologram too. We're sending machines out into the hologram to see space, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a hologram. That gets mind-boggling after a while. It's like, who's creating that one? Source. No, but there is no God. We all started with a big bang. Yeah, right. Yeah. Science can go in loops. Now, this is a key and core diagram that we use throughout all of the Inner Templar and Planetary Templar teachings. It is a diagram that's meant to show you, to conceptualize for you, the relationship of a 15-dimensional system. The core structure, or the core template that the universe, the manifest universe, is built upon are sets of 15-dimensional systems. One set of 15-dimensional systems, one set of 15 dimensions is called a time matrix. Now, a time matrix is interesting because it doesn't just hang up there in the sky and we came from elsewhere and went into it to get into time. It's about expansion and contraction, the breathing rhythm of consciousness and of source. All of this is why I look at some of the teachings that have evolved or de-evolved down the road, where God's out there someplace away from us. It is impossible. Because first you have source consciousness, God. It is intelligent, it thinks, it creates on purpose. It is an it because it is beyond form manifestation, which means it's beyond genderization. Genderization is an aspect of polarization rather than unification. God is not genderized. God is not physicalized, other than it's my millions and billions and eons of expressions as us and plants and animals and trees and galaxies. They are the body of God. But the consciousness of God exists first and foremost. The consciousness of God and the identity of God chose to create a hologram arena where it could get to know itself and experience all sorts of things. God is getting to know itself repeatedly over and over, and always will, through the myriad of manifestations that it is able to create. First you have source. That would be out here, okay? Going off the edge of the paper, limitless, boundless, but it's an energy field, okay? Consciousness field. Within that consciousness field, there are first levels of creation that are not quite dimensionalized yet. Before it goes into a standing pattern of light waves that flash off and on, it is first a standing pattern of sound units, which are units of vibration that are actually pre-sound. It's called primal sound. There's an old saying that in the beginning was the word, was the sound, was the vibration. God first contracts part of its consciousness to form a standing sound vibration field. Within that primal sound vibration field, which are units of potential particle. They're particle of a form, but they're not the kind that flash on and off yet. They're in a perpetual off position or a vibration position, so they don't oscillate and go into light yet. They are stationary sound, but they are also units of consciousness, of conscious awareness. That template of primal sound holds the identity levels of God that are called the Ascended Master levels. Now, every individual being, every individual anything that has come down into manifestation to experience the hologram, it implies that they have a family of consciousness or a set pattern of primal sound fields that they came through when they came out of God and came through that. Not, you didn't go away from God. You went into God deeper. Remember, God is here. This is inside, like a little area of your mind that you put over here like a file. You know how the internet works and the computers work? Where you have an electromagnetic domain over here. Okay, you're going to use that as one field. Then you want to flip to another screen where you have other fields. Well, you could conceptualize it this way. You have the consciousness of Source. And a small piece of that consciousness of Source decided to create manifestation to know itself in that way. So it created the primal sound field and the ascended master levels of consciousness that are forever. They're eternal gestalts of consciousness. There are 24 primal ones of those that form time matrices. Now, the numbers have to do with the mathematics, the mathematical arrangement that was used, just like computer programs are built on mathematical arrangements. Most computer programs here are based on a base 10 math system, you know, the 10, 20, 30. The Source creation was based as a base 12 creation pattern, which means it's built on increments of 12, 24, 36, 48, all the way up the scale. So we have primal sound fields. The primal sound fields are called the energy matrix. And they are in this diagram. The area is represented by here. So we have Source. The first contraction, where Source contracted its boundless self into a small area that it could begin to create within. Primal sound fields. There are 3 levels. The first contraction, which is the closest level to Source. This would be the last level you'd pass through, going out completely into at one with Source when you completely demanifest. The first is the ecstatic level. That's the first contraction. After you have God, then contraction within God. Next is the polaric level. Next contraction in. Next is the triadic level. Next contraction in. This is where the set, the beginning mathematical pattern for what becomes the trinities of dimensions in the light fields. This is where they're set, in the primal sound fields. This is where the rhythms of what becomes Partakai phasing, the flashing on and off, is set within the primal sound fields. And these things aren't things that were just created once and then went away. These are perpetually refueled through pulses of consciousness that come from Source into those expansion and contraction levels. First it contracts into sound. Then Source expands within its contraction. And here, actually starts up here in the diagram. It starts up here. These are actually circles and circles and circles and circles. Here, dimensions 15, 14, and 13. They represent the first expansion within the contraction. So you have God. God contracts, and within its contraction, it made a little domain. It will expand its energy again. This is where the primal light fields exist. They're called the Kirishe, which we'll talk about later as we progress. The Kirishe primal light fields of dimensions 13, 14, and 15. These are where the beginning of Partakai phasing starts. These are the 3 original rhythms where these 3 levels of vibration start to turn on into oscillation. So these are the areas. They actually don't flash on and off yet. Here they're in their off state. Here they're perpetually in their on state. So in dimensions 13, 14, and 15, you have stationary primal light fields that never shut off. And as you expand out from them towards Source, then that's where they shut off in their primal sound. And then beyond that is full expansion into Source, where you're out of the manifestation framework completely. So you have the primal sound arena energy matrix. The primal light field, now dimension 13, 14, and 15 correspond to these levels. This becomes important when you begin working with the Ascendant Master issues and with the higher dimensional currents or the higher frequency currents. The ecstatic level, which is the closest level to Source, that's where you would have your most information. That is where you would have your highest level of consciousness. If you met somebody that was a D15 embodied Ascendant Master, that means D15 doesn't go with here, it goes with here. All right, now there's a trick here that happens. These are expansions of these. But there's a process of this. If you were coming up the dimensional scale to ascend, if you wanted to ascend and start this way, you go through D13, 14, 15, full expansion, you have to contract back down to D13 to get back up to here, the ecstatic level. D13 goes with the ecstatic level. It is a slower oscillation, which means if you think in the terms of, okay, we're moving from sound into light, which would be oscillation. We're moving from no oscillation into oscillation. No oscillation, moving into oscillation. The first step, which would be the slowest rhythm that would start the process of moving into light, would be D13. And then the next step would be 14, which would move faster. The next step would be 15, which would move faster. So you actually have to expand all the way up to here and then slow down again to get back out, to do the contraction, to get back out into the primal sound fields. Now, they call these the primal light fields, and there are 3 primal frequency currents. They have the blue flame, the violet flame, and the gold flame. The flame refers to the primal standing light fields. D13, that corresponds with the acadic level of the sound matrix, is the blue flame light field. And it's out of that blue flame light field that the other 2 come. The gold is D14, and the violet is D15. Violet is actually a magenta pink color, but they call it the violet flame. The blue is actually a blue turquoisey color, very pale. They're very pale, like pastel-y colors. And D14, they call it the gold, but it's actually a very pale yellow. So these are the primal light fields. When we get into the end of Kathara 2 stuff, where we're getting into Vecca codes, we are going to be dealing with the mathematical programs that correspond to these and these in order to reprogram the parts of ourselves that correspond to these dimensional fields. They are, I get excited when I think about it, because the currents that we're being trusted to learn to run again are awesome. The consciousness level that goes with them is awesome. It's a gift that's being brought back to this planet after many thousands of years of its absence. So I get excited when I talk about them. But we went from the Partakai units, flashing out and off little units of consciousness, form Partakai grids. Partakai grids form chelons. They all form standing scalar wave patterns. They have different flash line sequences that form dimensions. The dimensions group into sets of 3 that creates what's called a harmonic or a harmonic universe. Now, this is where the patterns for the 3-dimensional setup are mathematically held always. These are the primal fields that nothing can touch and mess up. When we get into here, from D13, 14, and 15, that's called harmonic universe 5. That is the universe of matter density that's called antimatter. This is the first stage, the light field, where form possibility begins to happen. How they have that wild light radiation gas. Everything starts in that form, and it's spherical. We all start, everything starts as sons of antimatter energy. That's our first beginning of individuation into form, from being a common form of primal sound and source. All right, so we have the antimatter density level starts here at harmonic universe 5. From there, a thought form of God passes into manifestation next, into what's called harmonic universe 4. That's composed of 3 flashline sequences, dimension 10, 11, and 12. The 12 is the highest frequency one, has the fastest flashline. The 11 is the next one, a little bit slower. And 10 is a little bit slower than that. That is another 3-dimensional reality field. That creates what is called prematter, liquid light, hydroplasm, the hydroplasmic field. It is when the gas field starts to slow down a little, just like when water vapor begins to turn back into water, pourable water. So down in here, in dimensions 10, 11, and 12, are the primal light field, primal prematter fields. The Christos liquid light field is considered fully this one, the D12 level. This is where your divine blueprint gets set, where before everything, no matter what it was, be it a bug, a planet, or a person, started out as a ball of flaming gas up in the primal light fields. It's now going to start to take on form differentiation according to whatever that original thought was, that when it was God up here, when it was still home up here, decided it wanted to be a so-and-so, so it put the pattern of the so-and-so here, then here. Now it's going to solidify the pattern. It's going to go from gas or water vapor type stuff down into liquid light. This is where you get the liquid light fields. Here is where your first imprint, your perfect form, is perpetually and always mathematically encoded within the universal template. Every being that passes into manifestation leaves its imprint here That's its pre-matter divine blueprint. It's the divine blueprint because it's the part that came directly from the original intention. When the being was at one with Source, it made that intention. It was going to be in that form, in that time, space area. It was going to do this when it was there. It had that decision here. And it put itself through primal sound and primal light. And this was its first template, almost like a clay template. You could look at it as like liquid clay, where an impression was put there. And from that impression, the manifest form is going to densify. Now, this is a little bit, harmonic universe 4, pre-matter, is a little bit more dense in terms of matter than the gaseous state of the liquid light, of the gaseous light fields of the primal light fields in D13, 14, and 15 harmonic 5. Now, you have the template set here. The D12 level, which is connected to the D13 level, and remember D13 is the most powerful one of all because it's connected, light field, because it's connected to the Akkadic sound field, which is connected directly to Source. D12 can't be altered in the sense of destroying of a divine blueprint. It is always held in the connection with its D13 contraction point. There's a static that happens there that holds every divine blueprint perfect, no matter how much deviation may take place down here. But deviation can take place from 11.5 down, which means halfway up into the 12th dimension, you can start to have differentiation from what the original divine blueprint was. What this means, too, is when you're dealing with things like channeling and talking to beings that are out there somewhere that you don't know where they're coming from, a lot of people think just in the D4 astral plane is where the nasties are. But higher is always better. That's not true, because you can have messed up people in all sorts of different forms hanging out at D11.5. They're called D11 dark avatars. All right? So the universe is a much bigger place than we've remembered in a very long time. This structure, and beginning to understand the structure here, is the beginning of our wake-up call. So we begin to remember where we are. There's some responsibility that comes with this knowing as well, as far as a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, it's all safe and it's all perfect and nothing can ever harm me and the angel told me so and the angel's looking out for me. Good luck. Check the angel's resume, because you don't know where he's coming from. There's some nice angels out there. But the thing is, if you remember that you're an angel, you don't need an angel to fix it for you. You're supposed to be responsible for it yourself. This is one of the little tricks in the New Age movement that's happening. Oh, just give it to that angel or this one or that ascended master over there. They'll fix it for you, poor little pathetic thing. That's an insult, hate to tell you. You're avatars, and they're telling you you need like a D5 angel to fix it for you. This is part of the trickery that's going on, because this structure has not been taught in so long. People don't know what they're talking to. They start channeling, they have things come in. You can't tell if it's good, bad, or awful until you understand what the structure is, where you fit into the structure. Then you can start to, first of all, realize, I don't need something to run my life up there for me because I'm up there too. If something says, I'm an archangel and I'm better than you because I'm an archangel, you better listen to me. You say, excuse me, I'm an avatar. You know, like when you're going to grow up, you know. The intimidation factor that is so often used here to control and manipulate people by things coming in and communicating, you know, you can call them demons, you can call them angels, but saying, you are a poor, pathetic little race, you're a poor little sinner, animal species down here. You know, God sends the angels to take care of you. We were the angels God sent to take care of the animals. We're being conned because our memory banks have been wiped out through the DNA. So as we learn these structures, we're going to reclaim the ability to look any angel, archangel, or other avatar in the face and say, excuse me, why are you trying to take my power? Don't you have your own? A being that asks you to worship it is sorely in need of stealing your power for some reason. And if it is truly a being that is of a high order, it has its own power. It doesn't need to steal yours. So it wouldn't want you to worship it. God doesn't want worship. God wants you to know your worth as a face of God and wants you to co-create in loving creation. That's what God wants. The books were changed by certain types of beings, we call them fallen angelics, who came in and decided, because they can't access the primal currents anymore, because they can't pull them into their bodies anymore. They've learned the energy vampire off other life forms and other systems. They try to get other beings to hand their power over. So they can literally tap into your primal life force currents, into your biofields, into your chakras, and start feeding themselves off your energy, which messes up your DNA even more. These are some of the tricks that are being run in the New Age movement. And if in the Templar workshop, we'll get heavily into what's really going on there. But even in this workshop, it's useful to know that you don't need to get caught up in any of that stuff if you realize this structure is the internal structure that you're built on, as well as the universe, and this is the series of energy circulation and consciousness circulation between God and anything manifest. It implies that you exist within God to begin with. God isn't away from you. You are within God. You can't be away from God. You can only be forgetting that you're a part of God. And you can be stuck in a body whose DNA isn't letting that cognition and frequency of consciousness to come through. You can open up that connection to God by opening up the primal life force currents, which are the currents of consciousness that God sends to feed the time matrix, to feed all of us here. You can open those in your body, and that's what Kathara healing is about, learning to bring that potential back to our race, which was the original potential of our divine blueprint. So we have up here the primal light fields, primal sound fields, primal light fields, pre-matter template fields with the divine blueprint at D12 level. This is the pre-matter. Now from pre-matter, matter starts to get a little more solid, starts to crystallize a little more, and forms is here. Up here, forms are neat. In D12, did you ever see the Terminator movie where they had that silver guy that looked like he was made out of mercury, like liquid mercury? Well, that is kind of what you can conceptualize that reality field as being like. We all have an image of ourselves where we all look the same, actually, at that level, as pale silver liquid light beings, our silver self, our Christos self. That self is always with us and around us. And when we begin to work with Kathara healing, we begin to open that frequency within our body. Later, once we heal our DNA templates, we can actually move this body energy and the particles it's composed of into that self and demanifest and remanifest someplace else. These are the potentials that we have. Now, when we get from pre-matter, liquid light,